Hello, my quilting friends. Leah Day here with episode 50 of the podcast. And this week I want to do something a little different. It seems like a good time to check in on the podcast and see how things are going. Everybody starts a podcast for different reasons, and I started mine to really connect and make new friends in the quilting industry, to have an excuse to call somebody up and talk to them. I mean, that's really, honestly, that was my goal starting out. And then it's evolved quite a lot over the last year and a half, so I just want to share about that. And then also just generally setting long-term goals. I had a lot of things happen over the last 2 weeks that have been very exciting, and I thought about it. It was like, a lot of this came about only because I basically set that intention or set that goal 2 or 3 years ago, and then now this week it's kind of all wrapped up and happened. So I think that's really cool, and I've got a lot of perspectives on that I want to share. It's going to be a little goal update. And my word for the year, just in case you're new to the podcast, my word for the year is challenge. So I'm always trying to incorporate that and work that into the podcast this year in some way and explain what the challenges are that are going on in my life and how I'm working to overcome them. Kind of my key phrase for the year is rise to the challenge of your life. And that's really helping me so much. I cannot tell you how much that's been helping over the last few weeks. So what am I working on today? I have pulled out some stuff that has literally been sitting underneath my chair. And just in case you're listening to the podcast, I want you to know that there's also video, so you can see whatever I'm working on and see me actively sitting here, cutting, stitching, whatever I start doing. And you can find it all in the show notes, as well as photos and stuff of the things that I mentioned, the quilts and all that kind of good stuff. And you can find the show notes for this episode at leahday.com/episode 50. So come and check that out, and you can find all of the show notes to every podcast that we have shared, all linked up together at leahday.com/podcast. So really easy to come and find on my website. So what am I working on today? I am actually finally setting the intention to knock out my Eternal Love quilt. So this is a goddess quilt. She has bright blue flowing hair in 3 colors. She's wearing a purple shirt and she's holding a little baby. It is a Madonna goddess. And I think the name Eternal Love is pretty fitting because I don't know about you, but the second that I held my son, I understood what it was like to love someone. And I don't know, it was like the most magical, amazing moment of my life. And so I tried to capture that in this design. And I designed this quilt for Island Boutique last year, made the quilt, sent it off to them. It's in a trunk show with Island Boutique, the original. And then I have, of course, for photos and that kind of thing, made another one. And I knew I wanted to share this in video. I knew I wanted to share the whole step-by-step process in video and guide you through the process of making her, because she's a really pretty, it's a small wall hanging. It's like, it's on a half a yard of fabric as the background, so it's not huge. So it would be a really fun quilt to make together. And what has been holding me back? Like I said, I've been literally sitting on it because it's been all, like this whole mass of fabric and stuff has been stashed under my chair, under my desk right here. And I think the main reason is I have been prioritizing other projects over this one. And I got just a little reminder this week that needs to stop. I cannot continue to put everything else on top of my goals and dreams. And I really, really want to share this, and I really want to start sharing more of my goddesses. In fact, actually, I've got another one right here. This is Peaceful Goddess. And so this is a series of 4 squares, and it's a kind of a circular medallion style goddess face. And this one has also been in progress about the same length of time. And so I've got the blocks already done and we can quilt it together. It's just a matter of make the quilt, shoot the videos at the same time, shoot some photos, get it all done, get it ready to go. And every time I feel like I'm thinking it's on the list, and then I don't know, something else gets prioritized in front of it, and something else comes in, and it's like, that's more important. And then this just stays shoved in the corner. And it's like the whole, don't put baby in the corner. So I'm trying to, actually, I'm not trying. I am going to change this about myself. I am going to prioritize this project, and it is going to happen. And we're going to share it sometime this summer. And I'm hoping that will be maybe July. I think that would be a great month to share this together. So what I'm going to do as I'm sitting here talking to you is I'm going to spread out this pattern and start making my applique shapes. I have to trace all of these designs onto my fusible web. And I can do this while I talk to you and share this podcast. And so I'm always multitasking. I'm always doing more than one thing at a time. And mostly because I find a lot of times when my hands are busy, I stumble less. I know that sounds really weird, but I find that I can keep my train of thought a little bit better. So that's just a weird thing about me. So yeah, I am spreading this out, and it was one of those things that I put together for another company. And it was like when I was prioritizing it for Island Boutique, it happened really quick. But then now turning it into something that we will carry on our site, which will be a digital download pattern, that, I don't know, that for some reason has seemed more challenging and harder and more time consuming than making a printed pattern, which is so much harder, honestly. And this is one of those things that I was thinking about, is the longer that I leave something unfinished, and it seems the further I get away from it. So when I'm actively working on something, when it's spread out all over my table, when I are, like I'm knuckles deep in it, then that's the time to do everything I need to do and get it all wrapped up and finished. Setting it aside, it's whenever it ends up in a pile and I don't know what's in that pile, and maybe the thread's in one place and the fabrics are in another place and the pattern's written in another place, and I have to pull it all together to go on to the next step. That's when everything slows down. That's when everything gets challenging and hard. And so what I'm wanting to do is to stop stopping and to continue a project very fluidly from start to finish. And sometimes that might mean, that, other things get put on hold. So a great example of that is the quilt behind me. So last week I gave myself a treat, and that was a mini quilting retreat. I stayed home. I didn't go anywhere because packing stuff up is a lot of work and effort and not required. I just need to literally put myself in jail and say, don't check social media, don't go on Instagram, don't, give yourself a break from Facebook, and don't feel the pressure to blog. It's okay to hide out, and it's okay to give yourself permission to go make what you need to make and get it done. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted to have this quilt finished, and what this is it is a 4-petal, it's 4 Dresden plate blocks, and they're bright, sunshiny blocks with orange and red petals. And then it has curvy yellow binding connecting them together, and it's all on a black background, so you can just imagine how bright that is. And so I'm calling it Midnight Sunburst, and the Dresden plates are 20-petal Dresden plates. And I decided to make it last week, and I had to make it pretty much from start to finish really quickly in time for a show that I was going to over the weekend. So the show was VDTA or SDTA, and that stands for Vacuum Dealers or Sewing Machine Dealers Trade Association show. Never heard of the show ever until about a month ago or so. And basically it's a show designed for the dealers of sewing machines and big vacuum systems to come and learn and, see what's available and, just really learn how to be better business owners more than anything else. And so it was kind of it kind of lit a fire under under my tail, and also Grace Company's tail, to finally get something done that we really wanted done for a while, and that is our quilting rulers. So in a matter of about 2 weeks, we finished up our set of quilting rulers, and I've been playing with these. I've got true grips on the back, so they kind of stuck together a little bit there. So yeah, 3 rulers, a slice, super slide, and mini slide, and still a little bit prototypey, but these are nearly there. I'm so excited about them. And I had a chance to play with them there at the booth for Grace Company and kind of demo them, which was lots and lots of fun. But on the run up to the show, I knew I wanted something to show what the rulers could do. So that's why I made this quilt. You know, I really felt like that would be important to have something where it's like, here's the rulers, here's what you can do with it. And the cool thing is the slice ruler is an 18-degree wedge, and that's what you use to cut the Dresden plates. So these are not just unitasking quilting rulers, they are also cutting rulers too. No matter if you're you get the thickness for a home sewing machine or the thicker ones here for long arms, it doesn't matter. You can cut with them and be able to do all kinds of cool shapes. The 18-degree wedge can cut tumbler shapes, it can cut Dresden plates. The curves can cut freeform applique, and I've been playing around a little bit with that, as well as that's what I used to do the curvy binding and cut the edges of the quilt so they're nicely scalloped. And I knew that would add at least an extra day to the project, you know, and it was one of those things where it was like I had a vision for what this quilt would look like, and I knew what I wanted, and I knew about how much time it was going to take to put it together, and I wanted it done by the show. So there wasn't time to make a podcast last week. Like, I wanted to do this episode last week, and then I thought about it. I was like, well, wouldn't it make more sense to share this episode after the show and kind of after I've had that experience, number one. And then number two, it was just like, I don't have time. If I want to get that wavy binding done, then I'm going to have to stay home and work on that and not, you know, go out and shoot a podcast. So, you know, it is definitely a bit about prioritizing and deciding what is the most important thing to be doing at any given time. And then also pushing myself to accept that challenge. So 2 of these blocks, the top 2, which of course you can't see, but you can come and see a photo of them in the show notes. The top 2 blocks were quilted on my home sewing machine. That's what I'm used to quilting on. I've been quilting on a home sewing machine now for 13 years because Josh and I just celebrated our wedding anniversary. I started quilting right around the time we got married, so I always know exactly how many years I've been quilting, and we just celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary, so I've been quilting for 13 years now. And so I'm used to quilting on a home sewing machine. I have, you know, pretty good experience with ruler foot quilting on a home sewing machine and was able to knock those out, but it was very slow. And I started wondering, would this be any faster if I put this on the long arm and stitched it on the long arm? And I was terrified of that because I really don't have the same level of skill on the long arm that I do have on the home sewing machine. I was really scared of messing them up and having to redo them all over again. And, you know, Dad had already pieced up a mess of the Dresden plates, so I had those. But, I mean, it would take a lot more time to go and sew them all together and redo the block and glue it and the whole 9 yards. But Josh was really encouraging, and he's like, I really think that you can do it. You know, use the rulers for what they're designed to do and give it a try. And so I jumped on the machine and pinned them up to the machine. And I was a little like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe, you know, trying to stitch them on. But, you know, as I started to relax into it, I started realizing, wow, this is actually not nearly as hard as I was thinking it would be. Now, I will say I went on ahead and did the stitching in the ditch and the applique part. I did some blanket stitching. I did all of that. Of course, I had to do all of that on my home sewing machine just to be sure it was together and it was stable and all that good stuff. And, of course, the long arm can't blanket stitch. So I needed to do all of that on the home machine first. So when I got it to the long arm, it was stable. The layers were pretty much not, you know, solidly together. And it was just a matter of quilting the designs around the Dresden plates and in the background. And that it taught me so much about using the long arm, about, you know, sometimes, you know, I didn't have the whole space to quilt in, so I had to kind of quilt some of the Dresden plate petals and some of the background and then advance the quilt down the frame and then quilt a little bit more. So it was a really good learning experience, and I learned a lot more about the rulers and got a lot of good perspective there. And then I was ready to demo them when I got to the booth on Saturday. So it was all really good. But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't, number one, given myself permission to not do the podcast, to not blog, to not share, a tutorial last weekend, and also to just, be silent on social media for a few days. So it's a give and take. And I think that's a-okay. Sometimes we have to just, accept the limitations of how much time that we've got. And especially whenever you decide that you want to do something crazy, like, wavy binding on the edges, then that too. And it was one of those funny things. I decided I was not going to hand stitch the binding down, which I have always hand stitched wavy binding down. That couldn't happen. I had to stitch it down by machine. And somebody was looking at it really closely at the show, and the quilt was like 4 inches from her face, and she was looking at the back really critically too. And I went up to her and said, if I had had 3 more days, it would have been hand stitched, but it wasn't happening. And she laughed, and she was just like, well, I've never even seen it stitched by machine. And she was surprised that you could, do it that way. And the back isn't perfect, but it looks pretty good on the front. So that's good. So that was a great experience, and I really enjoyed being able to share at the booth, and also just being able to attend the show, which, I probably wouldn't have attended the show had I not had the connection with Grace Company, had we not had a product coming out together. And that was a treat, just to be able to see that side of the industry. I've been to Quilt Market many times, and Quilt Market is definitely a fabric-driven show. It is all about the fabrics. And this show was all about the machines, and that's much more my beat, I gotta say. I love machines. I love geeking out on all the tools. I am not so much a fabric person, really. I think that's an interesting side of the business, but I don't think it's the whole business. And and the machine side of it, everybody, likes to have a good machine. And it was interesting to see all the different brands and, their nice big booths and what was going on with each of them. So that was an adventure. It really was. But I have to admit, 2 days away from home and in front of people, smiling, talking, chatting, the whole 9 yards, it definitely is hard for me. And when people say the word introverted, they oftentimes get confused with shy. I'm not a shy person. I love it when people come up and talk to me. I love to seek out people and talk to them. Like I just happened by Eileen Roche's booth and got to meet her, and that was so awesome. I have been a fan of Eileen's for a long time. She was the first person to really kind of give me permission to do machine embroidery, because she described in one of her craftsy classes, machine embroidery people like a quick project that has great results, and they don't like to, have it be unfinished for a long period of time. And when she said that, I was like, that's me. I must be into machine embroidery too. And I don't know, it just unblocked me from the idea that machine embroidery was somehow cheating or something like that. And that really was wonderful. And so it was great meeting her and seeing her business. And she's such an entrepreneur and an inventor. She has invented all this huge range of products specifically for machine embroidery. And so that was fascinating. Just to, it was like I fangirled for a minute. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Eileen. So, even I do that. I have my superheroes in the quilting world, people that I admire, that it was a treat to meet her. Yeah, and I was just so honored that she even knew my name. So that was a delight too. And there were a few people that Mark, one of the guys at the booth, was like, people are kind of going, oh my gosh, it's Leah Day, but they won't come up to me and say something, like they're afraid of me or something. And I said, just tell them I won't bite. I really like that. And I hardly ever get a chance to be in front of people in that way. I don't seek that out. I do find it exhausting. Not in a bad way, but just, it's not my comfort zone. I can't rebuild energy there. That's what it means to be an introvert. I can't rebuild energy in a crowd. But I certainly love to be there for a short space of time. So work the booth for one day and then walk the show for the second day. Honestly, for only about half the day, only about, maybe 2-3 hours. And then I was just like, I gotta go home. I really have to go home. Because, I was getting really, really tired. and needed to get home. And even now, James is, of course, this week on spring break, which is great. We have a good time. But, you know, this is a day that I'm really wanting, you know, just quiet and stillness and to be all alone. And so that's why I came out to the Crafty Cottage and started working on this. Because even though I'm working a little bit here and of course I needed to shoot the podcast, I can still rebuild energy because I'm all by myself. And that's really important. So yeah, this was great. It was a really fun adventure. I feel like I needed that. It definitely made me feel great about myself. It's always good to get a little boost to know, I don't know, I guess kind of be able to gauge the impact that I'm having. You know, sometimes I put up a video and I see how many views it gets, but I don't really see your reaction to it. I'm not there in your room with you as you're learning something. You know, so sometimes I miss that side of things, and it's really good to be able to see real people in real life and hear from them and learn from them. And I learned a lot from dealers, you know, kind of while they were standing around and taking a look at the machines. I just was curious about their shops and how they run shops and what they take on. And what struck me that was really interesting is everybody is overextended. Everybody has goals that they, you know, want to do, you know, like, oh man, I really want to do more long arm quilting, or, oh, I really want to do more embroidery, you know, or, oh, I really want to do more design, or more teaching or whatever. And, you know, I heard that over and over and over again. Everybody has things that they want to do more of, and everybody has work that has to be done first, you know, and that's, it's always good to know that, you know, kind of we're not alone. You know, no one is alone. Everybody has these same struggles, and everyone's trying to figure their way out around it. And that was interesting too. So let's see here. What else is coming up? So back to the Midnight Sunburst quilt. I am going to be shooting videos on this because the the ruler sets are going to be coming out, and these are going to be single rulers, and they're going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks or so. And I'm going to start shooting videos this week, guiding you through how to make this quilt step by step. And yeah, and then lots of tutorials on how to use the rulers to make different designs. I haven't even scratched the surface with what you can do with them. There's so many fun, cool techniques to do. And I feel like I'm just getting started, honestly. So that feels great. And I know I'm going to be really, really busy with that. I'm also still working on Sherry's quilt. I'm collaborating with Sherry with WholeCircleStudio.com, and we're going to be putting together a really awesome fall quilt along together, and it's exciting to be doing this with someone else. I feel like I've got a partner in crime, which is great. So I have started shooting the videos for that, and then continuing those videos this week, and hoping to start wrapping that up and getting, you know, text and stuff over to Sherry, and you know, we're gonna have it kind of knocked out and ready to go, and that way, you know, we can spread the word about it and have 2 pretty quilts and all that good stuff, and it won't feel pushed, you know, right at the very end. We both decided early on we wanted to set really good deadlines, so that way it would be knocked out and we'd have, you know, several months to just be able to kick back and relax and share it together, and that's awesome. And kind of in that same line of thinking, I decided I was going to try and push out my Mally the Maker fiction novel really quick. Like, I was thinking maybe we'd publish that in May, and I thought about it a lot and decided, you know, that's really way too close. That's really way too quick. I am getting really close to the climax and finishing it up and getting everything wrapped up. I had to go back and fix a few things, and there was some editing and stuff that I needed to do before I could move forward, and now I've got all that done. So this week is going to be, all right, let's write to the end. You know, let's get it done. Let's get all the way to the end, and then I'll go back and do one final polish before I hand it off to Josh. And I've decided to push back the launch of it because I really want to set a solid foundation for this book. And what that means to me, at least, is I'd really like to build the website that I want this on, MallyTheMaker.com, and I really want to do some special tutorials for kids that will be hand stitching tutorials. I know this is way out of what I've done in the past, which is all on a machine. But I think that hand stitching is amazing. It's how I learned how to make quilts. It's how I learned how to sew. When I was a little girl, I didn't have a machine, but I had a needle and thread and some scissors, and you know what? I stitched a lot of stuff when I was like 6. So, you know, that was something that I found was really fun and really relaxing. It kept my hands busy, you know, and I think that's a really important aspect to have ready to go for that book. And then I also want to give myself permission to make the quilt from the book and have that ready to go, as well as a couple months ago I was working on the doll patterns. I kind of had to set that aside. So I want to get back to those doll patterns and work on those. And yeah, just have not, you know, of course, yes, the fiction novel is kind of the big deal and that needs to be done first, but it's being serious about the entire thing as a series, because it is going to be a series. I'm already starting to think of the outline for book 2 and book 3. And to really set this up and establish it as a, you know, gotta give it just a good base level foundation. I'm not building a castle on sand. I want to build a castle on bedrock, and that bedrock takes time to set up. So that's my plan there. And, you know, it's kind of like I feel like if I can get these projects kind of step by step, like I'm going to knock it out, give myself more time for the next thing. And with each thing that I knock out, I'm making sure prioritizing these ideas and projects where it's like, I really want to do that. That is the thing I really, really want to do. Then I know that I'm moving forward on the right things. And of course, this means a trade-off. There are some things that I'm going to stop doing and stop sharing. And I think one of them is I'm going to do a pause on Quilty Box. So I love Quilty Box. It's a lot of fun to get a box of fun gear every month. And the materials that came in this month's Quilty Box, I think you can absolutely enjoy using one of my past tutorials. You can make the 60 slice quilt with the materials that came in this month's Quilty Box, and that'll work out a-okay. But I don't think I'm going to make a new free quilt pattern this month. Actually, I take that back. We are going to do a new free quilt pattern this month. It's just not Quilty Box related. It is called the Rainbow Road / Twisted Squares quilt. And we're going to be quilting it in reverse. It's such a confusing thing to even describe. I'm still having trouble like talking through the intro to explain what we're doing. Basically, I printed backing fabric with the quilting design on it, made the quilt bigger so it could be the temporary backing while the quilt was being quilted upside down using the backing fabric design. I don't know. It's so confusing, but it's going to be awesome. So that's going to be out later this week. I was wanting to have it come up on Monday. Again, everything just got pushed back. This is what happens when you go to a show. You know, this is why I don't do shows. This is why I don't travel and teach, because if I did, that's all I would be able to do. I would not be able to run an online business, and I wouldn't be able to share tutorials. But, you know, I mean, I'm just looking at in a matter of 2 weeks, how much of my life got kind of discombobulated. I'm not complaining, but, you know, got a little discombobulated here. And that's why, and that's okay. I'm willing to flex and flow around it, but and I'm also looking at the reality of it is, you know, what is my business? And my business is being online and sharing tutorials, and I have that tutorial mostly done, but not all the way done. So it needs to be all the way done and finished up by the end of the week. So be looking forward to that too. So yeah, that's really what I've been thinking about, and that's what's been going on. Dad has been really, really sick this week, so we haven't been making a lot of progress together on several projects that we've got going on in the house. That's okay. I think he'll be back feeling better next week, and we'll get back on track there. You know, it is one of those things that's kind of interesting. Sometimes, you know, what I get done really depends on the people around me. You know, it's Josh helping me edit the videos, and it's Dad helping me prep the fabric, and sometimes, you know, things happen and we can't always get, you know, everything done that we want. That's why I think it's so important to work so far in advance, and that really helps everything work so much better. So that's really what's going on this week. Next week, we have Prism Path, and that starts on April 2nd. And here is the quilt. Let me grab it for you so you can see it. So here is the beautiful Prism Path quilt. And really this one turned out, I think, so beautiful. It is black with a rainbow of colors. And you can find those exact colors of batik fabrics on my website, leahday.com/rainbow batik. And I still need to finish up the quilting on it. I'll probably do that today. Finish up and knock out all the rest of the quilting on it and have that ready to go, because we are going to start piecing and quilting it together with walking foot style quilting starting on Monday. So I hope that you'll come and check that out and learn how to make the Prism Path with me. It's going to be a really fun, really quick quilt along right before spring. Well, actually we're in spring now. So right here at the start of spring, and then it's the perfect baby quilt. I mean, you could probably do all of the quilting in about 2 days. And it really is a very different baby quilt. It doesn't look too super simple, and it's a neat Bargello style design. So you'll also learn some Bargello techniques, some piecing techniques that can make some really cool quilts. So I hope that you'll come and join us for that Prism Path quilt along that's starting on April 2nd. So that's pretty much it for everything that's going on around the house. And now it's time to talk about setting long-term goals. We're going to check in on the podcast. Let's do all that first. Let's do the podcast first. So starting out, I started the podcast. I really started thinking about it in 2016. You know, just, hey, that would be kind of a cool idea to do a podcast. I've been listening to a podcast that I really liked, The Creative Pen. And, you know, I was like, oh, maybe that would be something kind of neat to share. And I really liked the format of the podcast that I was listening to and the way she ran it. And then I also really was drawn to the idea of having an excuse to talk to people. Sometimes I feel very lonely, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I mean, you know, I work out in my crafty cottage, or I work in the house, you know, and Josh is there, my dad is there, but, you know, most of the time we're not, you know, kind of talking to each other. We're doing our own thing. We're getting our work done. And sometimes it can be, you know, just a little isolating, just like, hey, I'm kind of just feeling a little lonely. And I've been feeling that way for a little while. And then the idea of the podcast started to generate. And I was like, well, that would be a way of sharing more, being more personal, of sharing the reality of what it's like to run a business like this, and also share, the behind the scenes of our life, which is what I try and share at least a little bit every week. And then too, to share other people with you. When I see something that's really cool, sometimes it's hard to know what to say to somebody. Like, I would really like to learn more about that, you know, and not seem like a creeper. You know, like the podcast gives me an excuse to say, that's really neat. I want to share that with other people. And, you know, let's talk and, you know, have that excuse to start that conversation more than anything else. And I am so pleased for that side of it. It has absolutely been successful 100%. And I did struggle in the beginning because a podcast is very different from just a straight video. It is long form content, which can be an hour, 45 minutes to an hour means that it takes, 3 or 4 hours to edit the video and the audio. And at the beginning, we were not doing video in any way. These days, I am starting to do video of both my intro plus the presenter. I've finally figured out how to set that up. And so that's been going pretty well. Sometimes we get a bad internet feed or glitch out, or there's a storm or something happens and we can't record it. But that has been going really well too. And, so in the beginning, I couldn't do that. It was taking forever to edit the videos. It was taking forever to get everything up. And I was trying to do this weekly. So I had to slow it down pretty soon. It was just like, all right, I got to go down to an every other week kind of thing. So did that for a while, and that really helped. It helped me figure out how to speed up. You kind of have to do something about 25 times before you really start to learn, okay, well, I don't have to listen to it. I can take the notes that I need when I listen to it during editing. I don't have to listen to it all over again to write the notes 3 days later, that kind of thing. So you start to pick up on ways to make it faster and ways to speed yourself up. And that took time to just time and experience until I was able to find those little methods that would speed things up. And so eventually last fall, I went back to a weekly podcast. At least every once in a while we'll miss a week here or there, like last week we missed a week. But for the most part, we are a weekly podcast now. And I originally started out just wanting to share a little bit more just with me doing great quilting debates. And I'm so, so happy that I did those great quilting debates. I have a few more ideas. But if you have some quilting debates that you would love to hear debated, let me know. Let me know if you have any suggestions. I've done pressing seams open. How dare you press seams open? Is starch evil? That kind of thing. So I've done a lot of different great quilting debates, mostly for all of the questions that I receive pretty much on a weekly or daily basis that I'm just, it would be great to just send you to that page so you can read it and get the whole story and, everything that I've been able to find about it, plus my, that is my rock solid opinion, and it is probably not going to alter or change over time. I have starched my fabric since 2005. I am not going to be changing that anytime soon. So yeah, that's been really, really fun. Lately, I have not been doing the debates because went on Whole30 diet, and debating something just felt a little, I don't know, it just felt like I might be a little bit too sensitive to do a debate, and I'm now feeling great on my diet, so I think I can probably get back to that okay. And that's another thing. I've been able to share, lifestyle stuff like going, deciding to go on a diet and things like that have been really important to me. And I think really good to share and say that out loud. I realized my weight was creeping up on me, and it was continually becoming a concern. I also shared that I stopped drinking in 2017. Yeah. And I'm so much happier for it. And this past trip over the weekend was the first time that I've traveled while on Whole30. And, it's sometimes a struggle to figure out what to eat when you don't eat a list of things that's a mile long. And I'm kind of taking my sister's approach to this. My sister, Camille, was who inspired me to go on the diet. And, she's kind of like, well, once you've been on the diet for 30 days, it's okay when you're eating out to have a little bit of sugar in your mayonnaise or something like that. I was a little worried. We went out to dinner for our wedding anniversary, and they knew it was our wedding anniversary. I was worried that they would send us out like a free dessert. So it was really nice. The guy actually asked first, and I said, oh, I'd just love some fresh fruit. And they brought us out the most amazing fresh fruit. I mean, a year ago, I would have been like, oh my gosh, that is so, really? You were happy with strawberries, Leah? Yes, I was delighted with strawberries and blueberries for my anniversary. That made me happy, happy, happy. I was completely delighted with it, and I feel great. And that's really the most important thing. So I've loved the podcast for all of those reasons. And then I love having the conversations with other quilters. Met some quilters at the show over the weekend, and I was like, yay, I have an excuse to have a conversation with you and learn more about you and get to know you better and, promote your organization. Really great quilting charity that I ran across that I would love for people to help out. Things like that are, I might not necessarily get an opportunity to learn more about that if I didn't have the podcast. And, I might miss the opportunity to get to know that person without the podcast. So that feels really, really good. So now onto long-term goals and how that's happening. How do we make long-term goals a reality and not just let things slip through our fingers? And this has been something a lot on my mind through the month of March, through the entire month of March. Kind of at the beginning of the month, I was thinking, wow, just this time, 2009-ish, yeah. This time, 2009, I was working on a big quilt called the Duchess, and stitching on tons and tons of beads on that quilt and kind of going bead crazy for it. I was making this show quilt that I thought, if I make this show quilt, then it's going to, I'm gonna make a living off of show quilting. There are some people that could probably do that, but not me. You know, I made so many mistakes with that quilt, and it was so fragile. You know, just basically a catastrophe waiting to happen. But, you know, I had all of these hopes and dreams, but really nothing to show for it. And I wanted to own a business really badly. I had a little boy that had just turned 2, and, you know, and I worked from home, but I wasn't very satisfied with what I was doing, you know, and I really wanted to figure out a way of making money with my hands, with my craft, with what I could do or draw or think or write, or, you know, patterns that I could think of doing, something I wanted. That's what I wanted to make a living with. But I couldn't figure out the how. That was the struggle. You know, am I going to go and go to shows and get some products and, you know, and that kind of thing? Or am I going to try and open a store? That was absolute, I already could tell you that was not going to be an option. You know, I'm very monetarily conservative in, you know, by nature. And the idea of, you know, taking out a small business loan and all that kind of stuff was just too scary, you know, especially when I see, you know, shops can pop up in my town and then disappear within 2 months easily. It's happened so many times that, you know, I knew that was just too risky for me. And, you know, and now I kind of look back on that and say, okay, well, 9 years later, pretty much, you know, look back at that goal, and that's, you know, we've really done it. You know, we've built the business. It supports Josh and I. It supports my dad too. You know, and this is very much a family-run business. It's just the 3 of us working together in the basement of my home and out here in the crafty cottage that my dad really renovated for me, so that way I could film without being driven slowly crazy because everybody was making too much noise. So, you know, I think the biggest thing with that goal was staying with it, was not letting go of it. I wanted it like a toothache, and my tooth ached for years. And I couldn't figure out how to start the business, whether, you know, I couldn't figure out traffic. How do I get people to know who I am, you know, in the sea of everyone? And even in 2009, there's lots of people online, you know, there's always going to be lots of competition and lots of other eyeballs, you know, other places for other eyeballs to go. That's the way I should say that. You know, so even in 2009, that was a thing. And it wasn't until I made Release Your Light, which is a big goddess quilt, that I came up with the idea for the blog. And really, even with the blog, it wasn't instantly, oh, this will be the business. It was more like, okay, this is something that I want to make, number one, because this is something that I would use. And that felt right. That felt like the right angle to come from. It felt like coming from the right desire. And I still didn't know what the business would look like with that. And I just kind of let what people said and suggested in comments guide me, you know, where I would have a tool like my really ratty quilting gloves that I was still wearing, that my very first original pair of Machine Girls quilting gloves that I had been wearing for years. You know, people would see them and be like, oh, you know, where do I get those? And I was sending the traffic off. I was sending them off to different places online. And then it was through comments and sweet people saying, no, Leah, you really should be the one to carry this. You know, we want to buy it from you. And that's really how we got started, more than anything else. And I think that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't constantly in the back of my head been thinking, how am I going to do this? You know, how do I achieve this goal? How do I get there? That was constantly in my mind. And one thing I was thinking about earlier this month, I got a little sick. I had a bad week, you know, just, you know, kind of a head cold, weird stomach flu kind of thing where it was like, do I have food poisoning? I was actually questioning, do I have food poisoning? It was that bad. And I was feeling, you know, like I was getting further away from my goals and I wasn't able to do as much. And that made me think about how sometimes in the past, especially like before James was born, how getting sick or just getting derailed, I was constantly being derailed. Like that was the word that I would use. Like I'm on a roller coaster and I'm going strong, and then all of a sudden I fall off the rails and I'm no longer going strong anymore, and I kind of lose my way, and I wasn't even on a train track. I was just kind of like puttering along without any tracks, you know. Maybe I'm pushing that analogy a little bit far, but the way I feel now is I might slow down, but my little engine's chugging along. You know, it continues to chug, and we've got some firmly laid tracks, and I know exactly what direction we're going in. And, you know, that's kind of why I'm working on this goddess quilt right now. I know this is what I want to do, and I am tired of wanting this and not pursuing it. The wanting so bad it hurts is, I think, a guide for me more than anything else, that I need to always have that in mind. And with that comes the hard part, and that is sometimes it hurts, sometimes it sucks, sometimes I don't want to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning to go write, which is what I do every day. I am sleepy, just the same as Josh, and I want to sleep late, but, you know, I'd say 6 days out of the week, I push myself to get out of bed early and go do the work. And sometimes I don't want to, and sometimes I'm in a pretty bad mood with myself, and I'm glad no one else is up because I'm all by myself, and I can be as irritable as I want to me and no one else, you know. But that's the thing, you know, in order to achieve these things, it is not, you know, want it on Monday and get it by Friday. It is I'm going to work for this every single day until it's done. And that could be years down the road. That could be a decade, you know. I have some goals that I've been thinking about a lot, especially, you know, to do with Mally, my fiction novel and stuff like that. And those are 10-year goals. You know, I really want to have you know, 9 or 12 books in this series. I would love to see, I mean, just I have all these crazy like pipe dreams, of course. And I mean, pipe dreams are pipe dreams, but hey, they can lead somewhere, you know. But I am not kidding when I say that's a 10-year goal, and might happen, but it also might not. But I know it has the greatest possibility of happening if I work towards it every single day. You know, and I don't get derailed. I keep on going and know where my train track is laid. I know where that's planted, so that even if I have a bad week and I'm tired and cranky or sick, you know, I can pick up exactly where I left off and keep pushing forward. So one thing that I do struggle with, and I've struggled with this for years, and that is feeling overwhelmed by not necessarily the wanting, but just how long the list can get. You know, if I was to make a list of every single thing that I needed to update on my website right now, and this is just like posts I need to write and tutorials I want to write and things I want to improve and tweak, and oh, I want that photo to look a little bit better and that kind of thing. But if I made a list of all of it, it would be so long and so overwhelming, it would probably give me a heart attack. And that's the thing, you know, it's tempting to make that long list and to, you know, start trying to cross out every little thing on it. And I've learned that that's not necessarily the way to work it. You know, sometimes you've got to, you've just got to work 5 things at a time and step away from the bigger picture, because the bigger picture is too terrifying. Like right now, if I think, oh my gosh, 12 books in a fiction book series that is just humongous and scary, but you know, it's also wonderful. But you know, if I think about that too hard, I can lock myself in place. I can scare myself too much, and then I start feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and then all the stuff that I need to do today starts to feel superfluous, you know, in light of this huge task that I've set myself. So I've had to learn to be very careful about that and to just say, what's the next step? How do I knock out that step? So like what I'm doing right now, I need to draw these applique shapes onto the fusible web. I know that there's a whole series of steps that comes after this, right? And you know, there's pressing it to the fabric, and there's cutting the fabric pieces out, and then there's layering it, and then of course I need to shoot videos of all of this too. And you know, if I start to get too obsessive about every single step, then I can bog down, and then that makes me stop because I start to get scared or overwhelmed. And I've learned, let's just do one step at a time. Let's just draw this on the paper. Let's just knock this out, and then we'll worry about the next step when the next step comes. And I think that's true of everything. And I think the key, though, is to not get overextended. You know, and also to just accept that some things are a little unfinished, and it's okay, and that's all right. You know, my website, when we had this switch out in 2015, we switched from one system to another because we, the company that had put our website together went out of business. And it was traumatic, and we're still recovering from it. I mean, my gallery is still not what it was before. And there are days that I wake up and it makes me crazy that it's been 2 years since that happened, 2.5 years since that happened. And it's still not back to what it was before. And that makes me angry with myself, and also just upset with that company again and all that good stuff. And I have to keep it in perspective. Like, well, okay, you know, what can I do today? Do I have time to knock out one of those pages today? Because I didn't build that original site in a day. You know, that was a long-term process. You know, that was one page at a time. And I gotta say, now that I have started putting new tutorials on leahday.com, it's because I'm already on the site, it's that much easier to do these updates and fix things. And that's been feeling really, really good. I'd say everyone that I met at the show this last weekend, every single person had things that they wanted to do more of and things they wanted to do less of. They had things left unfinished. Everyone wanted more time to work on the things that they really wanted to work on. And that was really helpful for me to see that we all have goals and we all struggle with prioritizing them. And, you know, it's just a matter of how much do you want to hurt for it? I think that's really the key. You know, how many mornings you want to wake up an extra hour early to make it happen? And I've been waking up an extra hour early since October to write Mally the Maker. And when I get done with that book, then I know that there will be another one and another one. So I might as well go on ahead and get happy waking up early, because that's going to continue to be my thing, you know, and that's okay. So I think long-term goals are something that just, you have to kind of sink in and be okay with it taking that time. I wanted to work with another machine company, really, honestly, I would say almost from the beginning. You know, from the beginning of the Free Motion Quilting Project, I was thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to, you know more about the machine side of it, and to know that I'm using a machine that has great customer support, because I didn't really know much about any of it. I've never met any of the manufacturers before. Then in 2016 I was at Quilt Market, and it was kind of like, you know, maybe I can start that conversation. Maybe I can start that conversation and see who would want to work with me, because I'm a weirdo. I gotta say, I'm a weirdo in the industry. Most teachers travel and teach, and and have this kind of there's a different set of expectation from those types of teachers or ambassadors or whatever that work for machine manufacturers, and I didn't really want to fit into that same mold. So I knew I needed to find a company that would be willing to work with me. And it was really, honestly, total luck that I ran across Grace Company and that they were interested in working with me, and also understood the value that both of us could bring to the table, and it requires that, sometimes, I've seen other friends of mine that are struggling with their companies that they're working with because they don't necessarily value the relationship. And that's really sad because there is value in working together and the things that we can do together. For a second there in the fall, I had a little worry, okay, well, I am, using this long arm and I'm trying to be really transparent about the fact that they sent it to me and all that kind of stuff. And I have been, I feel like, very good about messaging that. Whereas I think in other companies really kind of, scoot around that by, using confusing wording and stuff. But the simple fact of the matter is most professional quilters that are using a set brand name of machine have received that machine either at a significant discount or for free in exchange for basically the sponsorship of using that machine. Whether that's good or bad or whatever, it is how the industry works, and it helps us out quite a bit, and it helps the company out quite a bit. And for me, the most important thing was just making sure that whoever I worked with was going to create a product that I could be proud of, and that they would have the customer service to back it up. That's the most important thing. I've experienced some bad things from companies where I was basically told that they would fix the machine for me, but not for anyone else. And that was not in any way acceptable in my opinion. It was just like, wow, if Susie in Kentucky buys that machine and has trouble with it, it's basically on me because I told her it was good. You know what I mean? So that's been something that I've taken very seriously. And I have to say, it's been a long time in the making. That's not something that just popped into my lap in a day. That was something that took months and months, if not years, to develop. And then now it's been 2 years that we've been working together and only now have come up with our rulers. And that's really exciting because these things take time and there's a patience to it that you can't just blink and have everything done. There's always that we have to always let things grow, and we got to plant a lot of seeds. Maybe that's a better analogy than the train. I don't know. Planting lots of seeds in different places, whichever way you like to think about it. I think that it's an ever evolving and growing process, and I feel enormously lucky to be in this industry. I know that I've had a lot of lucky breaks. One of the most important ones being my father-in-law, who was an online, he was very early days in the internet and understood how things worked back in 2008, 2009, and was able to help me build my first website and teach me how to do Dreamweaver and all that kind of stuff. And I know I would never have been, even blogging back then if I hadn't had those experiences. So I think every experience that you have in your life helps you grow if you're willing to use it in a positive way. And whatever you're dreaming of, even if it seems crazy and overwhelming and insane right now, you can make it happen if you're willing to work for it and hurt for it and do the work every day and not get derailed by life's craziness, not get derailed by life's challenges, to get up that hour early to put in the time and effort. And it might take a month, it might take 12 months, it might take 6 years before you see the fruits of your labors, but it's worth it. In the end, it's worth it. And eventually it will work out. Now, sometimes we have to pivot and change direction. And that's the thing that I've been looking at a lot lately is just, okay, the experiences that I've gained, from a lot of different things have worked out great. But I have got to get more serious about sharing the things that are unique to me and that only I can share. I mean, anybody can teach you how to stipple, really. I love to teach beginner quilting. I really, really do. And I think it's something I'm really good at. But anyone can teach you how to do that. How many people are going to walk you step by step through fusible applique on a goddess quilt? That's really unique to me, right? So I'm hoping that, sharing all of that I have in the past has been, will be there, will continue to be there and be helpful. And then now sharing these new projects in the future will provide even more cool information and ideas for quilters too. So I'm loving this journey. I am still trying to figure it out. And I definitely believe that long-term goals and being clear on what you want is absolutely key. It does not happen overnight. It never does. Everyone that I met that at the show over the last 2 days, they had all been in business for many years or had all been wanting to be in business for many years. So I can say 100% it's a long-term kind of thing. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast and hearing a little bit about the behind the scenes, the more businessy side of things, which I sometimes don't always share. So I hope that you enjoyed this and got something out of it. And then this can definitely apply to quilts and quilting too. If you've got a quilt that you made, but you have not quilted yet, then that is a goal to complete just exactly the same thing as writing a book or writing a quilt pattern. It's still a goal to achieve in small chunks. So pull out that quilt top, snap a picture of it, and start thinking about how you want to quilt it and finish it. My grandmother left, my great-grandmothers actually, passed down many quilts. And it's those finished quilts that I played under as a little girl, and that is why I'm a quilter today, because she left finished quilts behind, not quilt tops, which probably would have ended up in the trash way before I was born. So please consider that and remember that, whatever goal you have, whether it's to make a quilt top for every grandbaby that you have, or just simply to finish one amazing quilt and to win a ribbon at a quilt show, that's an amazing accomplishment too. You can achieve it in small chunks, work at it every day, don't get derailed, and be clear about your goals. And that really helps the most. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast and that you'll come and check out the show notes so you can see all the pretty pictures and beautiful quilts that I'm working on right now. You can check it out at leahday.com/episode 50, and you can find all of the episodes linked up together at leahday.com/podcast. And please remember, we have a quilt shop full of tools and supplies. We have quilt patterns and books and video workshops to guide you through quilting and teaching you lots of different techniques. You can find all of that at leahday.com/shop, and that helps support the show and help me continue making new episodes every week. So I hope that you'll come and check that out. Until next time, let's go quilt.